I really want to just build on that and talk a little bit about, these factions that are in the Democratic Party. It's so interesting. And not only suburban white women are kind of the problem for Republicans coming up, but also the Rust Belt. Trump did take the Rust Belt and won those electoral votes. But as you know, those states were won by very thin margins. And in the midterms, they really, in many cases, went back to be a little bit more blue. And so I think that there's these rising factions in the Democratic Party, and here's what I think that they are, and you can push back if you think that they're a little bit different. But I think that you've got the economic progressive side, which Bernie Sanders, I think, has been leading. Tulsi Gabbard, who you may know, she is a representative from Hawaii. And then kind of Elizabeth Warren. I think that after what happened with some of the controversy that really kind of brought the left and the right together with regards to some of her comments on her Native American heritage or lack thereof. It's true. Well, there's kind of the economic progressive wing that focuses a little bit more about the economy and healthcare and a lot of issues that is actually resonating with people in more rural areas, which is very interesting. There's kind of this idea of better healthcare and a brighter future and more focus on economic policies. And then you have the kind of identity politicians, which are Kamala Harris and Kirsten Gillibrand, of course, coastal elites. And the final faction, I think, is the kind of Rust Belt Democrat, which is Amy Klobuchar, a senator from Minnesota, Joe Biden, who I think kind of is in there with the identity politicians, but he also can get those Rust Belt votes. And then also Richard Ojeda, who is running, he was a state senator in West Virginia. He's now running for president. And he actually voted for Trump in 2016. He comes from a coal mining community in West Virginia. And I think that he represents a whole different side of the Democrats that brings a little bit of that, Bernie Sanders economic progressive kind of flavor into it, but also really appeals to these Rust Belt states and these coal miners and people who are in these communities. So I do think that there are these three distinct factions that are forming. And I think that they're going to have to pick and choose which way. Well, there's also Beto O'Rourke, which I don't think really fits into any of those three. But I think they're going to have to choose where they're going to go going forward. And I think that they're going to try and capitalize on some of these weak points of the Trump presidency, which are kind of the Rust Belt slowly shifting back in the blue direction, and also the kind of the waning support of suburban white women.
Yeah, me too.
Great. But really, what do you think that Trump's strategy should be in 2020 if he wants to beat the Democrats? And what do you think that the Democrats' strategy should be if they want to beat President Trump?
I think that the Democratic Party has got to move back to the center. I would love to vote for a Democrat if they would move back to the center. The fringe politics, I think, has to go. The identity politics has to go. I think that 2020 should be about issues and not about personality. And I think that the Democratic Party is going to benefit if they edge themselves away from that left fringe, that left ultra-progressive socialist fringe.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think that unfortunately, there's going to be one side fighting fire with fire, and we're going to get a lot of he said, she said. And, you made a point about the Democrats kind of not talking as much about identity, but also going against the personal attacks and talking about the issues. And I also think that goes with Trump and the Republicans as well. I think that, so a lot of the Republican Party wants to talk about the issues, but I think that Trump should really be doing the same and cut it out with the personal attacks. And I know that is 100% wishful thinking, and so I'm not. It's hard to talk about these things and suggest that the Democrats do a certain thing when at the same time Trump is doing a lot of those same things, and kind of, Trump stokes identity politics, from my view, in a different sense. I mean, he stokes identity politics in the sense of identity in other ways, whether it be with immigrants and whether or not it's the complete the best assessment of how he does it. I think that a lot of people on the left view his statements on immigrants and and illegal immigrants to be stoking a different type of identity politics. And so I think that in 2020, we really need someone to talk about the issues. I actually really think that Amy Klobuchar could be Trump's worst fear. And it's pretty interesting because I think a lot of people are overlooking her. She appeals to that area where Hillary Clinton completely lost. We're talking about these Rust Belt states. And at the same time, for the most part, she's a pretty issue-oriented candidate. And she's been working a lot across the aisle with a bunch of Republican senators on a lot of major legislation. And I think that she may be Trump's worst enemy when it comes to 2020 if she does decide to run.
There are a lot of things that I like about Amy Klobuchar. I think that she seems very pragmatic, and I like someone who is willing to be a little flexible as far as where they stand on certain issues and on their beliefs depending on the information at hand. And so I can respect that about her, and I do like that about her. A couple of things that I'm not necessarily thrilled about are that for one, she has not really provided voters with her exact positions on a lot of key issues, okay? Of course, she's probably doing this because she's running for office again. But that leaves voters largely in the dark about several key issues. She does support federal spending as a means of promoting economic growth, and I like that. She does not support lowering corporate taxes as a means of promoting economic growth, and I do not like that. So there are kind of things that I can get on board with Amy Klobuchar, and things that I don't really like so much. But a candidacy like hers does not scare me like somebody like Cory Booker or Kamala Harris.
Or I would add to that list Kirsten Gillibrand.
Yeah. The people that do not support lowering taxes for economic growth. They don't support Social Security. People being able to put a portion of their Social Security into their own personal retirement accounts.
Yeah, I think the thing about those economic issues is, we can talk about Trump and the way he speaks and the way that he conducts himself a lot, and we do talk a lot about that. But I think that some of those issues that you're talking about, these economic issues, when people go in and cast their vote, they're thinking about what's going to help them the most at home. And
right, people vote with their pocketbook.
They vote with their pocketbook. That's so true. And is that the best thing? Is that, I think it's just a fact of the way that we are designed and the way that we're made as humans. I think it's just the way that we think as humans. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I just think that that's the truth of the matter.
Well, you're going to vote as a person to put somebody in office that is going to help better your self-interests, and that's not a bad thing. When President Obama was in office, he made some decisions that directly negatively impacted our whole town, that directly negatively impacted our
economically
families, that had devastating effects and impacts to small business owners, people that we know that built businesses over decades, that almost ended up having to file bankruptcy because of his policies. And so these are things that were directly related to the decisions that the President of the United States made. They would be fools to vote for a third term of that. And you can't ask them to or expect it. Talk about that the Democratic Party, or not necessarily just the Democratic Party, but a lot of progressive women in the Democratic Party like to kind of coin the phrase that people vote against their own self-interest when women vote for Republicans because of things like the abortion argument and things of that nature, women's health care, etc. Voting for Democrats, if it negatively impacts your family's financial standing, is voting against your own self-interests. And that's what happened since President Trump was elected. these things have been largely turned around. One thing that I do want to point out is that even though I am extremely unhappy and not looking forward to a Cory Booker, Kamala Harris presidential run, even though I completely disagree with them on all sorts of policies that they have, I can still find common ground with them because, like we said earlier, when we started this, they have the same end goals that I have. It's finding that common thread. Kamala Harris doesn't support mandatory sentencing for nonviolent drug crimes. I think that's fantastic. I can get behind that. I can support her in that. Cory Booker is pro school vouchers. I am not saying that I'm pro school voucher, but I am saying that there definitely needs to be some sort of reform done in the education system. And so this is something that I could get behind and agree with as far as a Cory Booker presidency is concerned. And so just because I don't agree with some of the things that they've done, such as, Cory Booker voted no on the affordable drug bill that would allow people to get drugs in cheaper from Canada. He wants a tax increase in order to balance the budget across all tax brackets. These things I'm extremely unhappy and wary of, but that doesn't mean that I can't find common ground.
And I think that's something that you can extend to other people too, like Kirsten Gillibrand and Bernie Sanders. I think that the main thing in starting to have these kinds of conversations is not to demean their motives. I think that's one of the worst things that you can do. Exactly. Is to demean someone's motives. Me and Secret are cousins, but we're also best friends. And we have had incredible conversations. We've also had fights where we have felt really passionately about some way on some issue. And I think that the reason that we're so close is that we know to take out each other's, we never impugn each other's end goal. I never have once accused her of not wanting to do the right thing for other people or not caring for her neighbor. I think that one of the worst things in politics is accusing people of having bad intentions. I think that a lot of these people have really good intentions. I think that they're just going about it in the wrong way. Or in some cases, like you mentioned in a lot of these, some of these policies that they have pursued in the right way. And we're about to actually talk about Trump and criminal justice reform and some of the things that he's done wrong, some of the things that he's done right, and where we actually kind of agree with the left and libertarian viewpoint a lot more. And so I think the main thing to take away, though, is that we are best friends. We talk about politics every day, and we're family, and we're able to kind of have that relationship because when she has a great argument and she makes it, I say, wow, you know what? That was really good. She made a great argument to me about 2 years ago. I remember having this really, we had a really passionate conversation about minimum wage, and she was able to change my mind. And I hope that I've been able to change her mind on other issues, or at least over the years, kind of push in one direction or the other. But that's because we're having
evolving,
right,
constantly evolving viewpoints,
right.
Which you can't have.
That's something that I appreciate. I think it's so important for the future of our country.
Opinions from other people,
right? Yeah, not dismissing them offhand just because it's coming from a certain person that you don't like, and I respect that about Secret, and I think that that's something that will help our podcast move forward. And we're coming at it from the perspective of, this is what our viewpoints are. We're not shy about what we believe, but we're also not afraid to change our viewpoints or present information from our viewpoints so that people that are listening know kind of where we stand when we're sharing our facts and information. And we don't act like we know everything for sure. These are off-the-cuff opinions based on the news, and we want to be able to kind of share it from a perspective of people that are everyday Americans.
Yeah, I think that it should be much easier for people to put aside the differences that they have or the dislikes that they have with somebody based on their personality and look at what it is that they are actually willing to do.